Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. I want you to imagine we are sitting down together in my clinical consultation room, and I'm putting on my cardiologist hat. We're going to open up and review our population's collective patient chart. Over the next few minutes, we're going to look really closely at some startling physiological data regarding dietary fats, cellular health, and exactly what is happening inside your cardiovascular system at a microscopic level. Okay, let's dive into our agenda for this consultation. We'll be looking at the body fat transformation, cellular oxidation, a suppressed historical experiment, rethinking cholesterol, diagnosing a fatty acid imbalance, and then, finally, I'll write you a dietary prescription. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The body fat transformation, a 60-year shift in human adipose tissue. Let's start with the primary symptom presenting in our modern population. When most people think about body fat, they just think about gaining or losing weight around their waistline. But as a cardiologist, I look at the molecular architecture. And if I saw this specific diagnostic test result on a patient's lab chart, honestly, alarm bells would be ringing. We've seen a roughly 200% increase of a specific molecule called linoleic acid that's an omega-6 fat, and it's accumulating deep within our living human tissue, basically creating a massive reservoir of potential inflammation. To put that timeline into perspective, back in 1960, the average human body fat was made up of about 6% linoleic acid. Today, we're sitting at roughly 18%. And actually, this exposure even begins before birth, as breast milk concentrations have totally doubled. What this shows us is that the literal physical material from which human bodies are assembled has been completely reformulated at the cellular level. And wild enough, this happened without our public awareness and certainly without our consent. Section 2. Cellular oxidation, the mechanism of action in cardiovascular tissue. We need to transition from the symptom over to the pathology, because as a cardiologist, I really look closely at what this structural change means for your heart. The main culprit here is linoleic acid. It's an omega-6 polyunsaturated fat, and you'll find it in absolutely enormous quantities in industrial seed oils. Think corn, canola, and soybean oil. Because it has multiple double bonds in its chemical structure, it is incredibly reactive. When this fat incorporates into the delicate membranes of your heart cells, it becomes highly vulnerable to oxidation, fundamentally altering how your entire cardiovascular system operates. Now, what's really interesting here is the stark contrast in structural integrity. Historically, our stored body fat was mostly composed of saturated fatty acids. Think of saturated fats like strong, unbroken bricks. They're chemically stable, they resist oxidation, and they provide incredibly durable cellular membranes. Linoleic acid, by total contrast, is highly unsaturated and dangerously reactive. It's like building with a crumbling wall. By displacing stable fats with reactive linoleic acid, we have drastically compromised our own oxidative stability. So here is how that cellular pathology actually plays out inside you. When you mobilize your stored body fat for energy, that embedded linoleic acid, it oxidizes. This creates highly reactive, toxic byproducts, nasty stuff like aldehydes, 4-HNE, and MDA. These compounds circulate around. They attach to your proteins, and they literally break them. In the cardiovascular system, this produces severe irritation and direct damage to your arterial walls. And to make matters worse, when these seed oils are repeatedly heated in commercial deep fryers at restaurants, it rapidly accelerates the creation of these cytotoxins. Eating heavily fried food is essentially a massive, uncontrolled exposure to known cellular toxins. Moving to Section 3, the suppressed experiment, reviewing the clinical data. It's time to shift from biochemistry over to epidemiology, just to see how this plays out across a huge population. I want to introduce you to the Minnesota coronary experiment. Back in the 1960s, the U.S. government sponsored this massive trial with 9,500 participants. They randomly assigned half of them to replace their saturated animal fats with polyunsaturated vegetable oils. The whole goal was to finally prove the lipid hypothesis. But the raw data, including thousands of extensive autopsy records, completely failed to match the narrative. So what happened? The data was literally hidden away in cardboard boxes for decades. When independent researchers finally analyzed those hidden boxes in 2016, the data revealed an unambiguous and frankly shocking suppressed finding. The vegetable oil diet did lower total cholesterol, exactly as they hoped it would. But here's the catch. For every 30-point drop in total cholesterol observed in that vegetable oil group, their risk of death actually increased by 22%. Let that sink in. The dietary intervention increased mortality.
I want to be perfectly clear and totally impartial here. This is not some fringe internet conspiracy theory. This reanalysis was published in the BMJ, the British Medical Journal, which is one of the most prestigious peer-reviewed medical journals in the world. The suppression of this critical clinical data, which showed vegetable oils increasing mortality, is a documented historical fact.
Section 4. Rethinking cholesterol. What the data actually shows. If lowering cholesterol with vegetable oils actually increase the risk of death, well, we have to ask a pretty profound question. Is total cholesterol even the right primary metric we should be looking at? Take a look at this U-shaped mortality curve from a 2016 review of over 68,000 individuals. The people who lived the longest actually had total cholesterol levels sitting right between 208 and 278. As a cardiologist, I find this absolutely fascinating because this lowest risk sweet spot is exactly the range that modern medicine frequently flags as elevated and aggressively treats with medication. The data shows both very low and very high cholesterol were associated with an increased risk of death. Physiologically, this makes total sense. Cholesterol isn't some toxic metabolic waste product. It is absolutely vital. It's a fundamental structural component of every single cell membrane in your entire body. It's the essential precursor to your steroid hormones and a crucial substrate for synthesizing vitamin D and bile acids. When we drive cholesterol levels down too low, we actually compromise our immunity and, paradoxically, increase the risk of strokes. By obsessing over total cholesterol as a proxy, we've kind of been overlooking the actual drivers of cardiovascular disease, like the severe oxidative stress and arterial damage caused by those linoleic acid byproducts we just talked about. Section 5. The fatty acid imbalance. Diagnosing the root cause. So, if cholesterol isn't the root cause, what is? Let's diagnose this systemic inflammatory issue by comparing our fatty acid ratios. Remember, linoleic acid is an omega-6 fatty acid. In our bodies, omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids actually compete for the exact same metabolic enzymes, and they have completely opposing effects on our inflammatory pathways. Historically, the ancestral human diet ratio was a perfect 1-to-1 balance of omega-6 to omega-3. This beautiful, even balance perfectly supports anti-inflammatory regulation and solid cellular membrane integrity. And this brilliantly illustrates the modern crisis. The average person today consuming a standard Western diet has an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of 15-to-1, sometimes even 20-to-1. This is a massive, heavily pro-inflammatory shift. It completely scrambles cellular function, fuels systemic inflammation all over the body, and puts extraordinary oxidative stress right onto your cardiovascular tissues. Finally, Section 6, the dietary prescription, your treatment plan for cellular health. Okay, our clinical review is complete, and it's time for me to write you a practical treatment plan to restore that cellular health. First things first, we need some actionable dietary fat swaps for your home cooking. You absolutely must eliminate the oxidatively unstable seed oils. I'm talking corn, canola, soybean, cottonseed, and sunflower oils. Get them out. What do you use instead? Well, for low heat, grab some extra virgin olive oil. For higher heat cooking, you want to rely on stable, historically safe, saturated fats. Real butter, ghee, or coconut oil. These are the fats that resist oxidation and protect your cellular membranes. So the crucial point comes down to this simple 3-step intervention. Step 1, clean out your pantry and completely eliminate seed oils from your home food supply. Step 2, minimize ultra-processed foods and commercially deep-fried foods, which are loaded with those toxic reheated aldehydes. And Step 3, actively fight the imbalance by substantially increasing your omega-3s. Get those through fatty fish or a high-quality cod liver oil. We want to pull that dangerous 15-to-1 ratio all the way back down toward a healthy 1-to-1 balance. But keep in mind, because this fat is literally embedded deep in your tissues, complete cellular replacement takes up to 600 days. It is a long-term commitment to rebuilding your cellular architecture from the ground up. I want to leave you with this final thought. If the physical composition of our bodies, right down to the very walls of our heart cells, has been drastically altered over the last 60 years without our consent, what steps will you take today to take back control and rebuild your body? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this clinical review has empowered you to make profoundly positive changes to your health.